Well, there's big news out of Canberra this morning on not one but two fronts. In breaking news, the government has rejected a plea from social media giant YouTube to spare it from first-of-its-kind age restrictions. We'll get more on that in just a moment, but first to Gaza, where the Albanese government is just one of a growing number of Western countries ramping up pressure on Israel. In breaking news overnight, the UK issued an ultimatum saying it is prepared to recognise a Palestinian state unless Israel takes steps to end what's happening in the enclave.
And Israel's foreign minister has hit back at the Australian government after it spoke out about the images that have been coming out of Gaza. All that as the death toll in the besieged territory has risen above 60,000. We're going to get more from our Middle East correspondent just a little later on the show. But first, let's head to Elias Clure in London and Isobel Roe, who is at Parliament House in Canberra. Good morning to you both. Elias, talk us through this announcement and its significance as well.
Good morning, James. Well, Sir Keir Starmer, the UK Prime Minister, actually called senior cabinet ministers back from summer recess to have an urgent discussion on the situation in Gaza. And he emerged a few hours later announcing that the UK was prepared to recognise Palestinian statehood by a UN meeting in New York in September if Israel didn't agree to several conditions. They included a ceasefire and an ongoing peace process that would include a two-state solution. It's effectively an ultimatum, which is the significance of this. Of course, France announced that it would also recognise Palestinian statehood, but that was unconditional. The UK has effectively set out a deadline here for Israel. Now, in response, I'm just going to read you a statement from the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who says Starmer rewards Hamas's monstrous terrorism and punishes its victims. He goes on to say a jihadist state on Israel's border today will threaten Britain tomorrow. You can't get a much more stronger denunciation of that announcement by the Israeli Prime Minister. The Israeli Foreign Ministry has also said that this is effectively encouraging Hamas and won't lead to a ceasefire. But the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, the UK Prime Minister, mentioned the images of starving children in Gaza, perhaps implying that it provided impetus for this announcement. Let's have a listen to him.
The suffering must end. Our goal remains a safe and secure Israel alongside a viable and sovereign Palestinian state. But right now, that goal is under pressure like never before.
The UK Foreign Secretary David Lammy gave a speech shortly after Sir Keir Starmer spoke to assembled media in London, and he conceded that acknowledging or formally recognising Palestinian statehood wouldn't change much on the ground in Gaza, but he said the UK was pushing for more aid and food to be allowed into Gaza as soon as possible. Guys?
And we'll have more reaction on that from overseas over the next hour or so. But Isobel, I want to go to you. The Israeli Foreign Minister has also strongly rebuked Prime Minister Anthony Albanese for a comment that he's made on the war. What's the reaction been?
Well, this is a senior Israeli minister accusing Anthony Albanese of telling a lie in relation to Israel's actions in Gaza. On Sunday, Anthony Albanese spoke to the ABC. He accused Israel of breaching international law by withholding aid and supplies from getting into Gaza. He called what was happening in Gaza, some of the pictures we've seen, as completely indefensible. Those comments have been mirrored around the world by other leaders. They are the same sorts of things that humanitarian groups have said. Those comments from Anthony Albanese were put to Israel's Foreign Minister Gideon Saar. This is what he had to say in response.
So this is a lie, because we are not holding aid. Of course, we are acting in accordance to international law, but the basic question here, we are holding aid or not? You can come to the Kerem Shalom crossing or to Zikim crossing, and you will see reality. And reality is that we facilitate the entrance.
On a sitting day here in Canberra, no doubt the Prime Minister will get more questions today on how he plans to manage Australia's relationship with Israel when he too is considering how Australia may move towards recognising a Palestinian state.
All right, Isobel Roe reporting there from Canberra and Elias Clure in London. And we are going to be joined by the Federal Communications Minister Annika Wells in a little bit later on the show.
Okay, just before we get to the breaking news regarding YouTube and the ban on kids under 16 from accessing YouTube, we've just heard that there's been a magnitude 4.8 earthquake in Western Australia. It's in the wheat belt region. We will get more details as they come to hand and bring them to you as soon as possible. So just repeating, a magnitude 4.8 earthquake has been recorded in WA's wheat belt. Well, we are expected to finally find out how the government's social media ban for under 16s will work later today. Now, this is after confirmation that YouTube will be on that list. Max Tillman joins us now from Sydney. Max, tell us what's happened with this.
Good morning, Emma. That's right. Well, YouTube will be joining the usual suspects of Instagram, TikTok, X, formerly known as Twitter, and Snapchat as part of the government's broad social media ban for those under the age of 16, which is due to come into effect in December of this year. Now, this decision comes only days after YouTube's parent company, Google, threatened legal action against the federal government, particularly given that the government had flagged in November of last year through former Communications Minister Michelle Rowland that YouTube could potentially be exempt from the ban, given that a lot of content that is found on that platform is classified as educational material for those under the age of 16. But we heard last month from the country's e-safety commissioner that YouTube was recommended to be part of the ban, and it does ultimately look like the government has heeded that advice from the e-safety commissioner. We're expecting to hear later today what the exact details of the ban will be and how it will effectively work for those under the age of 16. We also know that some of these companies could be facing fines of up to $50 million if they don't take what the government has described as reasonable steps in order to prevent those under the age of 16 from using those platforms. Now, in YouTube's particular case, YouTube Kids, which caters mainly for those under the age of 16, will be broadly exempt from the ban. YouTube is slightly different to some of those other stablemates there, like Instagram and TikTok, particularly in the sense that you don't need a login in order to use the site. So we'll be getting more details later today on exactly how this ban's going to work and how the government will be negotiating that. And these laws, when they do come into effect, will begin on December 10.
Okay, Max, thank you.
Let's get you some more news now. And the debate over a pro-Palestinian march across the Sydney Harbour Bridge this Sunday has intensified, with Labor MP Stephen Lawrence breaking ranks to criticise the New South Wales Premier Chris Minns' hardline stance. Yesterday, police rejected a formal application made by the Palestinian Action Group in Sydney to organise a humanitarian march in a bid to raise awareness of the crisis in Gaza. Mr Lawrence says the New South Wales Premier has no role in deciding whether protests can proceed.
A national survey shows many parents are underestimating the importance of children's baby teeth. The data from the Australian Dental Association reveals 1 in 5 children only brush their teeth once a day and most never floss. More than a quarter of kids are drinking fruit juice daily, and that's despite parents knowing it can lead to tooth decay.
Some critical economic data is due out today that could determine whether the Reserve Bank will deliver an interest rate cut next month. Earlier this month, the RBA made the surprising decision to keep rates on hold, with Governor Michelle Bullock indicating that she wanted to wait for this data to confirm whether inflation is under control.
Travel on New South Wales trains will be free from just after midnight tonight through to 6 a.m. on Saturday. The free travel is compensation for major disruptions to train services during the government's long-running pay dispute with rail workers. Switching off the Opal readers is expected to cost about $7 million in lost revenue.
A 22-year-old ban on the import of Canadian beef and beef products into Australia has been lifted. Australia imposed import restrictions on Canadian beef in 2003 following the discovery of Canada's first domestic case of mad cow disease. It follows the lifting of a ban on imports of US beef products from Mexican and Canadian-born cattle last week.